When sociologists talk about religion, they don't evaluate the truth of any religion, but instead they're studying the ways that religion shapes and are shaped by cultural institutions, and the ways that religion influences and is influenced by the behaviors of individuals. So again, I'm not trying to put any religion over the other. I'm simply evaluating the traditions, the rituals of each religion. And at one point, I will be talking about the patriarchal aspects of those three religions. And again, I don't mean to make any of you uncomfortable, and I apologize if I do. So, what is religion? A religion is a social institution dedicated to establishing a shared sense of identity. It encourages social integration, and it offers believers a sense of meaning and purpose. So religion may include some realm or some concept of the supernatural, and this includes heaven or an afterlife, or maybe your religion believes in reincarnation. And in some religions, it requires faith because we don't have physical proof of a supreme creator's existence or God's existence. And also, religion includes these concepts of the sacred and the profane. So, a sacred element is an element that inspires respect, awe, and even fear. So, in the sacred, we can include gods, goddesses, demons, hell, or other realms. For objects, we can include holy water, a cross, a Bible, the Quran, a synagogue, a mosque, a church, etc. Now, everything else, right, if it's not sacred, it's going to be profane. So this is an ordinary and commonplace element of life, as distinguished from the sacred. And I can give you the example of water, bread, and wine. So I want you to think about this. Whenever you drink a glass of water, you are not engaging in a sacred ritual. When you eat bread that you bought from the store, there's no meaning to it, right? You're just eating bread. Or when you drink wine, it's not a sacred ritual either. It's just wine that you've bought from the store. Now, once, for example, in Catholic religion, a priest blesses those three items, the water, the bread, the wine, the water becomes holy water. The bread becomes the body of Christ, and the wine becomes the blood of Christ. So they're only sacred when they are placed within the church, and if they're outside of the church, then they are not. They are profane. But I don't want to confuse you either, because it doesn't mean it has to be inside of a religious institution in order to be considered sacred. You can have a Bible, right? A Bible in your house, that would be sacred. Even though it's outside of the church, it's sacred still because it has a special meaning. And just think, if somebody were to burn a Bible, that would, elicit a reaction like, you'd probably be shocked. So that's what I mean by that. And different groups define their understanding of the sacred or the profane in different ways. So the best example I can give you of how people define their understandings in different ways is God. Now, for Christians, they define God as the Holy Trinity. They have the Son and the Holy Spirit and the Father, right? The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. And the Son and the God, by the way, or the Son, the Holy Spirit, the Father, they're all one and the same. It's like all the same God, but they divide it into three. For Muslims, they only believe in a singular God, right? Allah. And then for Buddhists, they do not deny or accept the existence of a supreme creator. The main point is to attain nirvana or inner peace in this life. So they do have what I would say like your holy men, kind of like Buddha, but that is not their God. And there's also three major forms of religion that I'd like you to know, and I'm gonna have those definitions on the next slide. Okay, so here are the major forms of religions that I was mentioning on the previous slide. So the first major form of religion is theism, and that's the worship of God or gods. Often you've probably heard other prefixes in front of it, like atheism or polytheism. So atheism, that just means that you don't believe in God. So A is without. And poly means many, so that means you worship many gods. The next type of religion is ethicalism. So this is the adherence to certain principles to lead a moral life. And the best example that I can give you is Buddhism, which is at the very bottom here. So they their religion is based off of certain principles to be able to attain nirvana or inner peace in this life. And the third is animism, which is the belief that spirits are not part of the natural world, and it includes inanimate objects. So many Native American religions operate off of this belief that the trees have spirit, the earth, or the mountains, they're all sacred. And those are the three major forms. Now let's have a look at the most dominant religions in the world. So the two largest religions that you can see right on that pie chart are Christianity and Islam. So for Christians, they have 31.5% of the population following that religion. And I'm talking about a global population, the entire world. And the largest religions or denominations within Christianity around the world are Catholics with about 50.1% and Protestants with 36.7%. So Protestants can include so many different denominations like Lutherans and Baptists and Seventh-day Adventists. So you have all these different religions under the Protestant umbrella. If we're to look at Christianity just in the United States, the largest denominations are Catholicism, and the second largest denomination is Southern Baptist. Okay, so now let's shift our focus back to the world religions. The second largest world religion is Islam. So they have 23.2% of the population following that religion. And while in the U.S. Christianity is the dominant religion, it's the number one religion. The second largest religion in the United States is Islam, with an estimated base of 5 to 12 million members. And other major religions in the United States are Jews, Buddhists, and Hindus. And then you can see there on the pie chart that Hindus are the third largest, Buddhists would be the fourth, and folk religions the fifth, and Jewish religions the sixth largest. So this map here looks at the majority religions for each country, and it's colored based off of that. So for example, just look at the United States. The United States has like a medium shade of red. And the reason it's a medium shade of red, which is representing Christianity, is because Christianity is the dominant religion in that country. However, it is not the only religion. I just finished telling you how Islam is the second largest, and we also have Jewish and Buddhist and so on. So I just want to point out that it doesn't mean that the United States is all Christian. It just means that that's the dominant religion. So that's how we're looking at the map, the dominant religions in those countries. So when you look at this map and you're looking at how the religions are distributed around the world, have a look at Russia, right? Russia is at the very top here on the right side, very top. And they are a large piece of land, right? It looks almost like, wow, there's just so much Christianity, because this is such a large expanse of land. But I do want you to consider population, because if we look at India at the bottom over here, India is yellow. It's colored yellow because of Hinduism, and I think a couple of other areas over here are colored yellow, like the other surrounding countries. So if we were to look at this map, we'd say, wow, there's not a lot of Hindus around the world. It's just like in a small little, area. But do not forget that in India, that small little land area contains about 1.2 billion people, which amounts to about 1/7 of the world population. And then conversely, you have Russia up there, which is a large land area, but it only boasts a population of 143 million. So, comparatively, that's a big discrepancy between the populations. So I just want you to consider that, because you're probably thinking, well, how is it that Hindus are 15% of the world religions if they have just this little area here in Southeast Asia? Well, that's why, because they have such a large concentration of people. And whenever I look at these maps, I wonder, how is it that this ended up this way? Why is half of Africa Christian and the other half Muslim? Or, why is this area in Southeast Asia Buddhist, but then right on the left of it, you see that they're Hindus? So I'm really interested in the patterns here. So I found a great video that's an animated map of world religions and how they spread. And I just wanted to show you that video. Hopefully I can make it work. It's on the next slide. Let's go to it now. So here is the video link for the animated map of world religions. I'm going to try to exit the presentation and display the video, and hopefully it works. So let's try it now. I'm just going to pause a little bit here. So I hope you enjoyed that video. I always love watching it and seeing how the religions spread from one country to the other, or how they scale back in one country or another. So now let's talk about beliefs. Every religion has its beliefs, and these are statements to which members of a particular religion adhere. Now, let's look at the beliefs in Hindu religion. Hindus believe in many gods. This is known as polytheism. They believe in reincarnation, that we are reborn over and over again. They used to believe in the caste system, which I believe you folks studied in the chapter on social class, where you were born into a certain caste and you would die in that certain caste. There's no way that you could move up or down. You could only marry people within your specific caste. And they also believe in karma, and I believe a lot of us do too. So karma is that your actions shape your fate. Your actions now, shape your fate in the future. Now let's move on to Christian beliefs. So Christians believe that Jesus Christ was the Messiah. Now the Jewish do not believe that Jesus Christ was the Messiah, and some of them don't even believe he was a holy man at all. Muslim religion, you have two major denominations. You have the Sunnis and the Shias, and the Sunnis believe that they are the keepers of the true faith, and the Shias believe that the Sunnis went down the wrong route because they did not follow Ali, which is the son-in-law of Muhammad. Because after Muhammad died, the Prophet Muhammad, his daughter before that had married Ali, and so usually the way it goes is that the son would inherit, this position of a religious leader, and the Sunnis did not agree with that, and they said, we're going to go follow somebody else. And then the Shia said, no, we're going to follow the true leader, which is Ali. So they were in disagreement on that. And so that's where the conflict comes from between the Sunnis and the Shias. It's like on who really was the person to lead them after Muhammad died. And some people adhere to religious doctrine in a strict and literal manner. And these people are called fundamentalists. You, I'm sure, have seen the Mormon fundamentalists, which are the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, FLDS. And the Mormon fundamentalists, they take the passage in the Bible that says that it's okay for males to have many wives, and they take it literally, and they say, well, that's how we're going to practice, our religion. And so what you have is like a polygamous cult, right? Men marrying many women over in Salt Lake City, Utah. This was going on in Salt Lake City, Utah, and they were taking more than 3, 4, 5 wives at a time. And the thing about the polygamous cult in Salt Lake City, Utah, was that they were caught by the FBI, and pretty much the main leader was imprisoned. So the thing is that you can have these religious beliefs, but they have to adhere to the laws of the country that you are practicing it in. Now, if you're a Christian fundamentalist, usually you don't want naturalism to threaten your beliefs. And what I mean by naturalism is science. Many people in, for example, the southern states, there's a lot of religious fundamentalism over there. And so they don't believe in teaching evolution in the schools because it pretty much refutes what the Bible says about how, the earth evolved and such. They also don't want to separate prayer and, the practice of religion from these public institutions. They do want to keep prayer in the schools and so on. They're against this secularization of society. All right, so another component of religion is a ritual. Religious rituals are practices required or expected of members of a faith, and an example of that is the Hajj. So this is a Muslim pilgrimage to Saudi Arabia or Mecca. This is what Muslims do, and they're hopefully, or not hopefully, but if they have the resources, then hopefully they will take that trip at least once in their life. They're expected to take it at least once in their life. And again, I have another video here. This one's 14 minutes long. Hopefully I can make it work. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have you guys go ahead and head over to that link, because it's too much of a long clip, and I feel like the computer won't be able to take it. Alright, so let's go over to that YouTube clip now. Hopefully you all enjoyed that video. Now let's move on to theory. So the first theory that I'm exploring is functionalism. And the question that functionalists ask of religion is, how is it functional for society? How is it benefiting to society's overall stability? Now, Durkheim, which is a major figure in functionalist theory, he identified three major functions of religion, and the reasons that religion holds society together. Now, the first one is that religion establishes social cohesion. And cohesion means social connectedness, integration. Religion unites people through shared symbolism, values, norms, and rituals. People all have a sense of what is acceptable and unacceptable in a society. You have stories, for example, like the one on Sodom and Gomorrah. I have a picture of Sodom and Gomorrah here at the bottom. And it was a city that was consumed by fire for being sinful. And this is where certain sexual acts that were prohibited were taking place. Bestiality was taking place. And the biblical lesson that they were trying to impart on the followers was that to not engage in these acts of sin, because if you do engage in these acts of sin, then God will smite you. He's going to consume your city with fire. And that eventually ended up turning into sodomy laws. Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but many of the states here in the United States had laws against anal sex, and so these laws were in place for many years, and it wasn't until 2003 when they were overturned. But those laws were informed by the Bible, the lessons, the values that we had in the Bible. The second reason that religion is a functional part of society is that it promotes social control. Many societies use religious ideas to promote conformity. So people who attend church, this is a study that they did, people who attend church or are religious are less likely to commit crimes. Also, religion is able to use God as a judge, right? There's this all-powerful, all-seeing, all-knowing God, and no matter what you do, right, this God will always be watching you because he's powerful. So it encourages people to follow norms, or through its lessons, right? Like the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, through these lessons, it's promoting social control. It's making people conform. And number three, it provides meaning and purpose. There's a comforting sense for us that our lives serve some greater purpose, that when we die, we just don't go to the worms, but that we end up in heaven, or whatever your beliefs are, right? That you're reincarnated, that you become a spirit, and that you live on. So because of this, because of religion providing hope and meaning and purpose, people are less likely to despair during times of change or tragedy. So you could think of a person that lost their child. It's always painful for people to lose their child, right? Because it's usually supposed to be the older person passing away before the younger person. So when things like that happen, people usually say, well, it was because God wanted your child with him. Now there's an angel, now your child's an angel, and so on. So usually this does provide a sense of comfort to people, because they say, oh, well, even though my child's not alive and they were taken from me at an early age, at least they're at peace, and at least they're in heaven. Okay, the second theory that talks about religion is symbolic interactionism. Now, I just wanted to set this theory up for you because I wanted you to kind of understand it before I got into it. But symbolic interactionists assume that society is a product of everyday interactions among individuals. In other words, we're constantly making meaning or sense of our world through our interactions with each other. And what's being produced in those interactions with each other? Language is being produced, ideas are being produced, symbols are being produced, meanings are being produced. And the product of our interactions becomes the definitions of situations. Now, I know it's probably hard to understand that, right? The product becomes the definitions of situations. Really, all it's saying is that the product of our interactions, the interaction between you and I, becomes our reality. And that reality could be different for you and for me. So, like, say I'm the person wearing the gold scarf, and you're the person wearing the white sweater. You know, me on the left, I might get a different how do you say? I might interpret our interaction differently than you interpret it. Maybe I saw it as a pleasant interaction, and that's my reality, and I say, okay, well, I feel really good that I talked to Katie because I feel we had a very pleasant conversation. But you, Katie, you're the person wearing the white sweater, maybe you didn't have such a pleasant interaction. And you could see how Katie's holding on to her beads. It looks like she has religious beads in her hand. But maybe she's a little bit uncomfortable, and here I am thinking that we had a pleasant interaction, but for her, she says, oh, that wasn't a pleasant interaction at all. So that's our different conceptions of reality. That's the product of that interaction, and we both get something different from it. There's no objective truth or reality out there. Okay, so the focus of symbolic interactionism is how people act towards one another and how they make sense of those interactions. And people create and change their social world through symbols. And those symbols include language, gestures, written language, and so on. And we have shared meanings, but we can also change those meanings through our interactions. So, for example, this picture of the soldier at the top, is he experiencing joy or pain? So usually I pose that question to my classrooms, and when I ask this question, sometimes people say pain because they look at the fact that he has a helmet on, right? The helmet already signifies that he's at war, or he's a soldier. Maybe him crying and with that solemn look on his face indicates that he's not feeling too good. But then once in a while, I'll get students that say, well, maybe he's experiencing joy. Um, maybe somebody that he hasn't seen in a long time, came back from the battlefield and he's relieved. He's just happy to see that that person is still alive. That could be it, right? Or maybe he is looking at a broadcast. Maybe there's a TV in front of him that's showing Obama on the screen saying that the war is over. Maybe he's crying tears of joy. So you don't know what's going on, right? And so some students will say, no, it's tears of pain. And other students will say, oh, it's tears of joy. And at the end, students, after interacting with one another, they might say, okay, I could see how it might be pain, or I could see how it might be joy. So they'll see each other's perspectives, and they'll change each other through that interaction. Now, how does this relate to religion? How is it that symbolic interactionism relates to religion? Well, this theory emphasizes that practices and beliefs are not important unless people regard them as such. So you can think about the Bible, right? Or any other religious doctrines. Those religious doctrines can be interpreted differently by different people in different places or within different times. And that could be the same religion, right? Christianity can be different even here in the United States, and we see this going on, right? In that sense, religious doctrines like Bible or the Quran, they don't have an objective truth, but instead they're being interpreted by people. And an example I can give you of that is that some churches here in the United States are accepting of gays. They actually allow gay people to be part of their clergy. Like in the Episcopalian religion, they allow gay bishops in their church, openly gay. While other churches do not allow gay individuals in their church, they do not accept them, they do not accept that lifestyle, and that's a good example of that is Catholicism. So why is it that Episcopalians accept gay people in their church when Catholics do not? They're both operating off of the same doctrine. They're both looking at the Bible for insight. So why is it that Catholics do not accept gays but Episcopalians do? And what a symbolic interactionist would say is that it's all about interpretation. It's all about the way that people look at that religion. Another theory that examines religion would be conflict theory. So this theory was advanced by Marx, and what Marx thought about religion was that it was particularly harmful to oppressed peoples. He called it the opium of the people. So I just want you to think about it. Why would he call it the opium of the people? Why would he compare religion to a drug? I'll pause for a bit. Well, he compared it to a drug because he said that it legitimized the status quo and it diverted people's attention from the social inequities of this world. He said religion is a clever means of stratification to be able to perpetuate inequality or to maintain it, really. So think about the caste system. How was it structured? The caste system was structured off of religion. So they had this inequality built into Hindu religion. You were born into a certain class and there was no mobility. And to challenge the system, the caste system, was to challenge the religion itself, right? So that's why you wouldn't question the system, because it was to say that you didn't believe in the religion, and that's dangerous, right? Because it's trying to tell you to accept your position in this world. Christians do this too. Christians try to divert people's attention from social inequities. So Christianity talks about humility and about being rewarded in heaven. There's this statement that you can see in the Bible over and over again. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. So meaning that people who are last on earth, the people who are suffering now and that are poor, will be first in heaven. That's what people say, right? And it appears many times in the Bible. So it's pretty much telling you, if you're humble, if you're poor, don't worry. Don't stress about that right now, because you're going to be rewarded in heaven. So it's kind of trying to maintain that status quo. The second thing that it does is that it encourages people to accept the social problems of this world, such as crime, hunger, poverty. And the best example I can give you of that was Pope Francis was in Mexico in February of 2015. Now, I just want to let you guys know I am Catholic, okay? I still practice that religion, but I also do recognize that Pope Francis has a tremendous effect on people and how they think and how they act. Now, when he was in Mexico, he was giving a speech, and he said that the reason that crime rates were so high was because of the devil. He said that the devil was punishing Mexico with violence because they were so devout. Now, he also said that blaming things on the government was a superficial response to violence. That they shouldn't blame things on the government. That it was Satan, really, that was punishing Mexico because they're so devout. Now, that for me was very dangerous for him to say that, because as a matter of fact, the government does have a lot to do with Mexico's violence. The corruption in Mexico is insurmountable. So for him to say that, for him to tell people, stop blaming it on the government, some people that don't know how to think critically, they would accept that and they'll say, you know what? Stop blaming it on the government. So if you go up to that person and you say, oh, the government's so corrupt and this, they'd say, well, the Pope says to stop blaming it on the government. We should just blame it on the devil. So it'll maintain that problem, right? It'll keep the status quo. So that's why it's dangerous. The third point is that dominant religion reinforces the interest of those in power. So the people who benefit from these teachings in the religious doctrines is the rich people, the heterosexual people, males, right? The bourgeoisie, the people that have a lot of money, they don't have to worry about people revolting or any sort of revolution, or the poor people questioning the system, because religion keeps them in line. Remember, it teaches them humility. And males and heterosexuals, they are able to maintain their power by citing religious doctrine. You could just think of the Marriage Equality Act and how the reason that many gays didn't get the opportunity to get married was because people kept saying that it was an abomination, and they were basically basing it on the Bible. The last point that I wanted to make is that religion creates hostility and violence because it's motivated by religious difference. And so you have like the Sunnis and the Shias who are constantly fighting one another. You have Palestinians and Jews who are fighting one another, or hate crimes against Muslims here in the US, and so on. This is a picture of the article on Pope Francis when he was in Mexico City in 2015. And I just included it here so you could see that I wasn't just making things up, that he in fact did say what I said he said. Okay, so now we're moving on to a feminist theory of religion. And the way that the feminists see religion is that this social inequality, this, males having dominance over females, can be explained because most of the major religions are patriarchal. People act this way because of their beliefs, their religious beliefs. And examples of that can include Islam, which has the Quran, the holy book, gives men dominance over women. And depending on what nation you're talking about, because not all Islamic nations practice the religion the exact same way, but some nations have taken a fundamentalist approach to the interpretation of the Quran, which means that they don't allow women to have the same rights as men in some countries. And the best example that I can give you is of Sharia law. In some countries, Sharia law is just the way that the laws are here in the United States. They function the same way. It's like, don't steal, don't, commit adultery, don't, they're just setting up morality for Muslim followers. And some countries, however, are more literal in their interpretation, and they do not allow women to drive. They do not allow women to vote. They do not allow women to go to school. They don't allow women to hold public office. So all of these different things, and it's really just based off of Sharia law. And Sharia law in those countries where women are not given as many rights, it's usually a little bit more difficult for the woman to question male's authority or to sue a male than it is for a male to win in court against a woman. Again, you could also see this in Christian religion. You can see this in Jewish religion. So I'm going to go over to the next slide and show you. So Christianity is patriarchal. There are many verses in the New Testament that support this idea. And I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of how, like, in the Bible, it supports this male dominance over women. So this first quote from the Bible says, "Wives, be subject to your husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church." In other words, the men are the head of the household and they should be respected, and you should respect them the same way that you would respect God. The second quote, "For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man." In other words, men were not created for women. Women were created from man and for man. And the third one is it's not a quote, but under Catholicism, women are not allowed to hold high-powered positions within the church. They can't be priests, they can't be bishops, cardinals, popes. They can only be at the very bottom of that hierarchy as nuns. They can only help, right? They're more they're more of like a, how do you say, like support staff. The last example here is Judaism. So they also support patriarchy, and not all practicing religions or denominations of Judaism, but specifically the Orthodox Jews do have more of a like a sexist perspective or view of women. So here's a prayer that they recite every day. "Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, that I was not born a woman." So you can see the sexism directly in this prayer. Okay, so those are just some examples. Let's move on to religious communities and religious experience. Okay, so the next component of religion is a religious experience, and this refers to the feeling or perception of being in direct contact with the ultimate reality, such as a divine being or being overcome with religious emotion. The best example I can give you is of that video that you watched on the Hajj pilgrimage. Hopefully you watched that 14-minute video. And those are Muslim pilgrims going over to Saudi Arabia, to the area that we know as Mecca, to be able to worship where their prophet was born. And another experience that is often regarded as a religious experience is being born again. So some Christians, when they spend a lot of time away from their religion, they come back to it and they get reconfirmed or baptized into a new religion than the one that they were in before, and they call that being born again. Now, in religion, we have different religious communities. We have 4 different forms. Here on this slide, I'm discussing the first 2. So the first one is an ecclesia, and this is a religious organization that claims to include most or all members of a society and is recognized as the national or official religion. So on the next slide, I have a map of an example of what an ecclesia is, but all it is that your membership is by birth instead of by conscious decision. So you're just born in that country and you're already going to belong to a specific religion. So in Saudi Arabia, if you're born in Saudi Arabia, it's very likely you're going to be Muslim, because that's the national religion. Same thing in Thailand. If you're born in Thailand, you're probably going to be a Buddhist, because that is the national religion. Okay. The second one is denomination. So this is a large organized religion that is not officially linked to the state or the government, And you can just think of the United States. We don't have a national religion, but we're a pluralistic society, and we have many different religions. We have Catholicism, we have Baptist, we have Muslims, we have Jewish, so all these different denominations of religion. So this is the slide that I wanted to show you to illustrate the ecclesia. So if you look at Thailand, is over here right under that gray area that is China. So right under there is Thailand, and they are Buddhist. Almost, 99% of the country is Buddhist. So that's an ecclesia. It's like the national religion. Same thing with Saudi Arabia over here in the Middle East. That's in green. They are like 99% Muslim. And this is to illustrate the denominations in the United States, the second concept that I told you about in the previous slide. So you can see all the different denominations, Christian denominations here in the United States, Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and Orthodox Christians and Catholics. So those are all denominations of Christianity. The third concept here is a sect. So a sect is a relatively small religious group that has broken away from some other religious organization to renew what it considers the original vision of the faith. An older example of this would be Lutheran religion. So back in 1520, Martin Luther protested against Catholicism because the Catholics, he saw them as being very greedy, and you could pretty much buy your way into heaven through this indulgence. You could pay a priest a certain amount of money or make a donation to the church, and they'd say, "Don't worry, you're going to heaven." So to Martin Luther, that did not make sense. So he protested against the Catholic Church. He made his own religion, the Protestant religion, and that became the new denomination, the new Christian denomination, and it bore all these other denominations like Calvinist or Anglican and so on. Now, the other one that I wanted to talk about was the cult or a new religious movement. So this is a small alternative faith community that represents either a new religion and makes a new claim about the supernatural. The best thing I can give you, the best example would be Scientology, because they're a very new religion. They're very cultish in nature. I'm not trying to pass judgment on them. I'm just saying that they're so small. They have a new claim about the supernatural, and usually these religions are viewed as less respectable than the more established faiths. I also have a picture of Jim Jones here at the bottom right, and he was also the leader of a cult. He had all his members move over to South America to like jungle area, and they were living on a commune, and then he ended up killing all of his members, and then I think he might have killed himself, but he poisoned them with cyanide. Okay, so some trends in religion. Early sociologists predicted that modern societies would experience widespread secularization. So what does that mean when a society is secularized? It means that religion has less of an influence on the public sphere, specifically in politics or in the economy. And you see this even in the United States. We're becoming more and more secular. We're trying to separate church from the state. And the only reason that the Marriage Equality Act was able to pass was because people recognized that that was religious groups trying to influence political laws. And it's against our Constitution to include any sort of religion or like to be influenced by religion, because we're supposed to be a secular society. We're supposed to be a pluralistic society, meaning that there are many religions present or many beliefs reflected in our population. And so that is why the Marriage Equality Act passed, because people realized we're not supposed to be influenced by religion. So we're becoming more secular as we go, into the future. I believe religion will have even less of an influence on politics and on economy. And evidence of this is just the increase in the US of nuns or agnostic atheists, many of whom are young adults. So people in your generation, they're more aligned with these agnostic or atheist beliefs. So agnostic is a person who claims neither faith nor disbelief in God. So they don't deny his existence, but they don't accept his existence either. An atheist is a person who disbelieves or lacks belief in the existence of God or gods. So an atheist just denies completely that God is even present. And so these two labels, agnostic and atheist, these are two rising identities among young adults in the United States. However, about 85% of the world's population still adheres to some religion. So more than anything, people are religious, because only 15% of them are not religious. But those numbers used to be a lot higher 60 years ago, 70 years ago. For example, in 1900, right? That's about 100 years ago, or more than 100 years ago. 96% of the nation was Christian and only 1% was non-religious. Now in 2013, you have 74% of the nation Christian and 17% is non-religious, and 9% was some other type of religious beliefs. Anyhow, that concludes my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.